Okay, so in this video, I want to take you through the retouching steps that'll take you from here to here. Okay, so this is the final retouch picture, and I actually took this whilst I was presenting for the Flash Centre and Elincrom at the recent SWPP event in London, which was in January 2017. And I promised those folks there that I'd take you through the retouching. Now, regards this picture, if you haven't seen it already, if you dive over to my website, I've taken you through a little blog post here which goes through exactly how the picture was lit, just using one Elincrom Rotolux Octa. I'll also put the link to that in the description part of this video over on YouTube as well. But I want to take you through some of the retouching steps to get to this final image here when we've originally started with this one here. So if there's any techniques that I kind of brush over quite quickly, I'll include those at the very, very end of the video so you can click on them and actually look at those particular techniques in a lot more detail. But I do intend to go through this fairly quickly. All right, so let's have a look at the picture then. First of all, I don't have any kind of systematic kind of workflow where I always do certain things in certain order. Generally, when I look at a picture, whatever it is that sort of stands out to me that needs fixing, that's how I work, and I'll work on that one first. Now, when I look at this one here, straight away, we were presenting, I was working very quickly, didn't use the old grey card, so the white balance is what I want to fix. So I'm just going to go to the basic section here over on the right-hand side. I'm using Lightroom. Click on the white balance tool, add a grey background behind, so I'm just going to click to the side of our model here, Lewis, on the grey background, and that's going to give me a nice starting point for the white balance. The next thing I'm going to do then, I'm going to crop it down because we've got this area in the top left-hand corner, so I'm going to get the crop tool by pressing R on the keyboard. I'm going to hold down my shift key, click on the top left-hand corner and drag downwards so it actually drags it in the same aspect ratio just there, so something like that will be fine. And then over in the basics panel, what I'm going to do now is just take the shadow slider and bring it up quite a way, just to sort of bring a bit more detail into those shadows. I don't need to go too far because it's going to not look too realistic, but maybe around about the 50-ish kind of mark. Sometimes when I do that, I might need to bring the highlights down, but I don't think we really need to do that in this image. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the detail tab and add a little bit of sharpening. Now for me, my own taste when I'm actually working on male portraits is the amount that I use for sharpening is generally around about the 40 mark. And then I'm going to hold down my Option key on Mac or Alt key on PC, click on the masking slider, and it obviously goes white, meaning that all of the picture has been sharpened, and I'll drag it over to the right-hand side to bring in black, which is the areas that aren't being sharpened, and kind of get it to a point where I think the areas that I want to be sharpened, mainly Lewis, and a little bit on that step ladder there are going to be sharpened, nothing on the background, which takes me around about the 80 mark, something like that, on the masking slider. Now if we move further on down, we'll go to lens corrections. What I will also do is I'll put a tick where it says remove chromatic aberration, and I'm also going to put a little tick in the enable profile corrections as well. And you can see it does reduce a little bit of that vignetting that we're getting on this particular lens here. Let's just take the vignetting slider and drag that out just a little bit more, just to reduce it to around about there. Let's have a look what that does for us. That's going to add it. So let's take it to the right, just to decrease it just a touch more, something like that. Now one extra little thing I might do, let's just get my Wacom pen here. I'm going to click on the adjustment brush and I'm going to bring the exposure up just a touch. And I'm going to paint over his face just to bring up a little bit more exposure on his face there. The lighting pattern is exactly how I want it, and again check out that video so you can see how I did that. Just want to bring a little bit more lightness into the face there so it draws the viewer's eye straight onto it. So something like that is fine. Now I'm going to send this over to Photoshop now to carry on, do a few more little things. There isn't much that we've actually done here, so I won't be sending it over as a smart object. Instead, all I'm going to do is go to Photo, Edit in, and choose Edit in Adobe Photoshop CC 2017. That'll then send the picture over as a normal basic layer, not a smart object, so that I can then continue with my retouching. Okay, so here's our picture of Lewis. Let's just zoom in on him now. Let's just zoom in. And the first thing I want to do, I don't like to use the spot remover in Lightroom. Between you and me, I find it quite laggy. It really does seem to strain the computer. Even though I've got quite a high spec computer, it does seem to go quite slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the spot removal tool from the toolbar over on the left hand side. And this will do a very, very quick job. Just get rid of that little mark on his nose just there. That's perfect. Just on the little cheek. Nothing else I want to do. I don't want to make him look too perfect. Male portraits always look good, in my opinion, when there's got a little bit of kind of grunge in there. No, they're not totally perfect, but that's fine. Now, the next thing I'm going to work on is his eyes. I'm going to use a technique that I call amazing eyes, and you'll see at the very end of the video there'll be a thumbnail where you can check out that video to show this technique in a lot more detail. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the quick mask. There's a certain way that you need to set quick mask up, so if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. Then I'm just going to get a normal brush, and I'm going to just select the area of the eye that I want to brighten, and also add a little bit of colour in there as well. So just come over here. I like to use quick mask because it's a very visual way of me actually adding into a selection. Let's just get that off just there, a little bit in. Like I say, I'm going through this quite quickly. Let's just go there. Okay, come out to quick mask and we get our visible marching ant selection. To brighten the eyes up, I'm going to use a selective colour adjustment layer, change the colours to neutrals, and to brighten them up, I'm going to first of all use a blend mode. And over on the right-hand side of the blend mode I'm going to use is linear dodge. And when I click on that, you can see the eyes go really, really bright. But the great thing is, because we're using an adjustment layer, we've also got opacity, so we can bring it up or bring it down to get the exact kind of look that we want. Now that we're using this selective colour, and you'll see this in that video at the very, very end of this that you can click on, you can also then come in, use these sliders to change the colour of the eye as well. But this looks pretty good actually. You can see it's nice brown eyes. If we want to add a bit of contrast, we'll go from neutrals to blacks and take the black slider at the very bottom here, bring it over to the right just for a bit more contrast in there like so. That's looking good. Let's just zoom out a touch. Yeah, I might take that opacity of this layer now down to around about maybe 50%, something like that. Actually, maybe 40 is good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blank layer, and I'm going to call this one eye sharpness. And here I'm going to actually sharpen the eyes. I like to do this within Photoshop, and I'm going to use the sharpen tool over in the toolbar. You can see we've got the blur tool, sharpen tool, and smudge tool. If I use the sharpen tool, at the top now where we've got the options bar, obviously each tool has its own unique options that you can use. Got the blend mode set to normal, the strength generally around about 25 to 30 is what I'll keep it at. But because we're using a blank layer, we need to have some pixels that Photoshop can sharpen. At the moment, all it's seeing is a blank layer. So you need to make sure at the very, very top here where it says sample all layers, put a little tick in there so it allows Photoshop to see below that blank layer and find some pixels below that it can then sharpen. Once we've done that, let's just have a click. We've got the sharpen tool. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is just click down on the eye and brush over it without lifting off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Whatever I do on that eye, I'll also do on this eye. So click down without lifting off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you might see it on the video, but before and after, before and after. You've got to remember that when you're using the sharpen tool, it kind of works like a spray can. So if you imagine now you're using a spray can of paint, when you press down that nozzle and you go from left to right, if you don't let off or release that button, the paint is going to build up and build up and build up. And that's exactly the same as a sharpen tool. Once you press down and keep going over the same area, the sharpening effect is going to increase. So whatever you do on one eye, make sure you do on the other eye as well. All right, so let's just, again, going very, very quickly. The next thing I'll do is just maybe do some dodging and burning. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Layer, New, Layer, and in here we'll call it D and B for dodging and burning. I'm going to change the blend mode here from normal to soft light. So I'm going to do some dodging and burning on skin. So think of soft skin, so we're going to use the soft light blend mode. When we do that, we get this little checkbox appears where it says fill with soft light, neutral color, 50% gray, and we'll click OK. And we'll click OK in there to do that. Now, without that blend mode, all you're going to have is a grey layer. We need to have some pixels that we can make brighter or darker because obviously we're doing dodging and burning. This is now giving us some pixels, but we can't see the person beneath it. That's why we need to change it from normal to something like soft light, which is a great one for doing skin because the grey goes, but the pixels still remain so that we can now do our dodging and burning. Now I'm going to go and choose my dodge tool over in the toolbar. At the top of the options here, the exposure is set to 10%. I tend to go below 10% or around about 5%, something like that. And always make sure that you put a little tick in this protect tones checkbox just there. Now I'm not going to go all the way through the actual dodging and burning process here, but basically what I like to do is add highlights where there's bright parts and darken down any mid-tone or shadow areas. And that helps to add contour to the picture. So let's just do a little bit Bit of a highlight on his side of his face there. Now, if I want to use the opposite tool, at the moment I'm using the dodge tool. If I want to use the opposite tool, all I need to do is just hold down the Option key on Mac or Alt key on PC, and it automatically flips me to the opposite tool. And that saves me from having to change it over in the toolbar. So it's a really quick way of working there. So let's just do this, and we'll darken down the eyebrows, something like so. There's a shadow on that side of the nose there. Maybe that there, and we'll just darken down a little bit of the old 5 o'clock shadow just there. Now, I've only done literally seconds worth there. I would spend a lot more time on this, but you can see when we turn it on and off, if we turn that layer on and off there, you can see already in seconds, we're getting some of the dodging and burning effect coming in. All right, so let's double click on the hand tool, go back to full screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a texture onto the background, and this is the way that I save myself around about £600 to £700 by not having to purchase one of these textured canvas backgrounds, and they're fabulous. I do want to get one, but because I'm mobile, it can be quite expensive, and they do get creased if you don't leave them hanging up all the time. So one way that I tend to do this, or fake this look rather, is by using a texture. And this has been photographed. This is literally just a piece of concrete taken with my mobile phone. So I've got mine stored in my libraries here. So let's just bring this up. Let's just go to my textures, drag this down so we can see it in there. There we go. This is the one that I want to use. I've called it my faux oliphant, fake oliphant background. I'm going to drag that into my picture. That'll go on top of Lewis. Let's just close that down. Now, because I'm going to use this as a background, we don't have to worry too much about stretching it out. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key or Alt key on PC and drag upwards like so. So it drags it the opposite way as well, just to fill that canvas up like so. Now, this has actually got a little bit of colour in this, and for this to look good, you don't really want to have any colour when you're using textures to add them onto grey background. So I need to desaturate this. Now, if I go to the image mode, adjust and desaturate, you can see that desaturate is actually greyed out. I can't use it. And that's because I've actually got this texture stored from my cloud library. And you can see the little icon in the bottom right-hand corner. This would also happen if you actually brought the texture in as a smart object. What we actually need to do now then is rasterize this layer to make it into a normal layer. And the way I'm going to do that is go to the layer menu, come down, and we're going to choose rasterize layer. And that'll just take it to a normal layer. Now we can go to image, adjustments, and you'll see desaturate now is available to us. Click on that and it removes the grey or the color from there. To get this onto the background, let's go from normal. I like to use overlay, and that puts it all onto that textured background there. You can see if I turn that layer on and off. The problem now is it's actually on Lewis as well. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask. Going to get a brush with a black foreground color. And then all I'm going to do is just paint it off Lewis so that the texture is not on him. So I'll very quickly just come in and paint this off him like so. There we go. Come down here. Something like that. It's looking good. Now you could, if you wanted to check where you've done this, just turn that layer on and off, see if you can see it appearing anywhere, which I can just on this bottom bit down here. Or another great way to see where you've painted and where you've missed is actually to click, or press rather, the / key on your keyboard. And when you do that, it gives this red overlay, almost like quick mask, to show you exactly where you've painted. Whoops, so I need to just continue to paint just in some of these areas just here. I'm actually going to leave it on the ladders. I think the texture looks quite good on the ladders, and you can't really see it that much anyway, so just bring it down to there. Paint that little bit off there as well. That'll do me. Again, just going really quickly. Yep, that's looking good. So now press the / key again to go back to normal mode. So now we can see when we turn that on and off, we've got it pretty much just on the background and obviously on that step ladder as well. Now I don't need to use this at full strength. I can also take down the opacity of this layer. But before we do, I'm going to click on the thumbnail of the texture and go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I'm just going to blur it just a little bit just to fake that look of depth of field. So we'll go radius of 2, that's enough. Okay on that. And then I think I'll take the actual opacity of this layer down to around about maybe 50%. It doesn't need to be a lot, but that's just right for me. Yep, liking that. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a merged or stamped layer to the top of the layer stack, and I'm going to call this one Topaz. And this is the only plugin generally now that I tend to use. It's called Topaz Clarity. It's an effect that's very, very difficult to replicate just by using Photoshop on its own. So let me just show you this. I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz Labs and Topaz Clarity. And there's a huge dialog box here that's got loads and loads of options available to us, lots of presets and lots of sliders. You see on the left-hand side here all the presets, right-hand side all these particular sliders we can actually dial in the own settings that we want here. Now, out of all these sliders here, I generally only use the very top two, micro contrast and low contrast. I'll take micro contrast to around about 30, and the low contrast pretty much halfway, so 15-ish, something like that will do me. And then once I've done that, that's pretty much what I always do. Click OK. That'll process it. You can see the progress bar at the bottom of the screen here. That's going to build up and send this now back over into Photoshop. And it's then that I can decide whether or not I've either done it too much or not quite enough. But we'll just wait for that to finish processing it. So now back into Photoshop, and we can see now if I turn that on and off, quite liking that actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I might take it down to man about 80%, something like that. Now then, the next thing I'll do is maybe a little bit of colorizing. And generally what I used to do before was using the Nik collection. We had Color Effects Pro 4 that you can actually download for free from Google. I'll put the link in the description if you haven't got it. It's free, so why wouldn't you? But generally now I tend to use what's called lookup tables. And again, there's a video where I'll show you how I use those. Those are found in the adjustment layers up in the top right-hand corner here. So we've got the second row down. It's the far right-hand corner that looks like a 3x3 grid. And to give you an idea of the kind of thing I did here, let's just click on the color lookup table here. I generally only ever use the top menu. And we'll come down to something like, let's say, Moonlight, something like that. And I'm going to lower the opacity to around about maybe 20%. Let's add another one and just play around now just to dial in some kind of a recipe. So I want this one to be quite a cool looking picture. So we can go horror blue. What does that do for us? Maybe take that down to 10%. Okay, I might try just one more, make it nice and cool. And we'll go to Crisp Winter. What's that one do for us? That's quite nice. Take that down to 20%. Let's just put all these three into a group now. We've got the upper one selected there. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click on the first one. So now all three of them are selected. And then we'll go to the flyout menu at the top of the Layers panel there and choose New Group from Layers. And I'll call that LUT for Lookup Tables and click OK. So now I can click that on and off just to see if I like it. Great thing is it's in a group. I can also dial it down. So let's take it down to maybe 70%. It needs to be quite subtle. Something like that's looking good. All right, let's just create one more merged layer to the top of the layer stack and just do some finishing touches now. I might just dive back over into the filter and camera raw. And let's just see what we can do here. So do I need to bring up some shadows? Let's get the shadow slider, bring that up just a touch maybe. That kind of works. And you know, I might actually use an adjustment brush just one more time. And I might just put a bit more exposure back on that face again. Now, just so you know that when you've got in your camera raw here, when you've got all these sliders, you might have them all over the place like this. If you want to set them back to their default, so they're all down the center there, all kind of going back to 0, you can either double click on each of the little dials there to bring them back, but to do them very quickly all at once, just go to the menu at the top right-hand corner of camera raw, just at the top here, and it says reset local correction settings. And you'll see all those sliders when I click on that, they all go back to 0. So it's a nice quick way of doing it. So we've got the adjustment brush. Let's just bring up the exposure to a tiny amount. And we'll just paint over the face just a little bit. Just there like that. So we go there, dial it in, something like that. It's looking pretty good. And then we'll click OK. Now, there were a few other little things that I did. One of them, you'll probably know about my cartoon painterly look. I generally add that to about 99% of my pictures. I did do that with this one, but I reduced the strength of it down quite a lot. But I do like to add that effect in. There is a video on that as well, and I'll put that in the description part. But that's pretty much it. That pretty much takes you all the way through the retouching. We didn't do much in Lightroom, but if we just look at the original image, this is what's brought us from Lightroom. We've added the selected colour to work on the, oops, let's just do that. I don't know what's going on here. Let's just turn those off. We then worked on the eyes, and then we sharpened them. We did a bit of dodging and burning, not much. We added the texture on the background and we blurred it. Use of Topaz Clarity, a little bit of colouring, and then some final touches in camera raw, bringing back in the shadows. If you've got any questions, by all means, drop a comment in the comment section there, and I'll definitely make sure I get back to you. But I hope that's useful. Check out the video at the end, and I'll see you later.